Hey, thank you all for tuning in and watching my video. Today I want to talk about my big decision and the big decision that put me on the path of making and doing exactly what it is I'm doing today. There are some other things along the line, but this is the pivotal moment in my life. And so what it means to me, or what it is it's the date I decided to join the United States Air Force. It's one of those things in my senior year in high school or junior year in high school. I had just changed schools. I could no longer play football, and so I had to switch schools due to like zoning restrictions, and so I kind of gave up on my football dream in a sense because it just, I guess at the time it didn't feel right. And then I distinctly remember looking around and asking myself, what is it that I wanted to do in my life? And I didn't have any sort of direction or answer to that question going into my senior year in high school. It was just like I kind of was whichever way the wind blow in a sense. And I remember looking around in my family environment, and I'll never forget this moment. I looked around and I remember standing on the porch at my grandmother's house, and it was me, my cousins, my uncle, my mom, and my grandparents, and just like some people from the neighborhood. And I was just like, this is not something that I want to do for the rest of my life. And I was like, I just can't see myself being in a situation like this for the rest of my life. Because see, I'm from a place where you would literally drive past it driving through Alabama, and you would never even know that there were people who lived there and that had lives. And it's just a pretty unknown place. I don't live in the middle of nowhere, but it's easy to pass by, right? And so with having no direction and just people just living day to day, and my dad, working two jobs trying to help put my sister through college, I did not see a future in myself. I was blessed with a couple opportunities to do like some dual enrollment. I got to do some SolidWorks classes and some AutoCAD things and learn 3D printing at a very young age, which later on helped me out immensely in my life. But in that particular time before this decision, I had no direction, right? So there was something that I needed to do something. And I'll never forget, I had this call to action, and it was from this instructor who was a Army Reserve, and she would tell us that at some point we had to make a decision, right? So she kind of pressed us to make a decision, and she did it by saying, you need to give me a decision that you're going to make going out of high school by, I forget the date, but it was basically at the end of the semester in a sense, right? And if we didn't, we would have to write every week that we didn't have a decision, we would have to write an essay on why we didn't have a decision, right? And so, me with that pressure, I'm having to think, I'm looking around at my environment and looking around at the people around me, and not necessarily wanting to work a warehouse job, and knowing that like I couldn't afford to go to school, or even I couldn't afford to have my parents pay for school because they were putting my sister through her doctorate program to be, an optometrist at the time. And it was just one of those things where I knew for a fact that I could not afford to go to school, and I didn't have the grades at the time to go to school either on a scholarship. So it was just like I need to figure it out. And then I remember just leaving school that day, and it was in October. I remember just leaving class, like leaving, like I remember I got out of class early, and I remember just like driving and just being like, I need to figure something out. And like maybe it was serendipitous, or maybe it was just, my mind just knew exactly where I needed to be. And God put me in a place to just, I literally just, it just, like, I can't even tell you, it almost was autonomous. I just drove myself to the recruiter's office, and I got out. And that day I was like, he showed me a video of the Air Force. He was like, "What are you doing to school?" And I was like, "I'm doing this, 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 and this." He was like, "This is where you need to be." And At the time I was 17, I didn't turn 18 till November. And I just made that decision, was just like, yo, I'm going, this is where I'm going. I like wherever this takes me, as long as it takes me away from where I'm at now, I don't care. I'm going this way. And through all of the apprehension and through all of the nerves and having to talk to my parents about it, and I didn't even talk to my mom and dad about it for like till I turned like 18, if I'm being honest, which I had signed up when I was 17. And I kind of had to like hold off on the paperwork for a little bit because, you have to have your parents' signature at 17. So I kind of did it. And then I kind of like meandered around. Like I kind of just was like, here, I signed up for the Air Force. And it was like a huge deal. But it was one of those decisions where I had to make because I couldn't see myself doing that. And through all of the trials and whatever else happened in the Air Force, good, bad, or indifferent, that led me to where I'm at today. And I became a better person because of it. And that decision was one of the biggest decisions I've ever made in my life, to ever put me in a situation like that. And, my social cultural environment played a huge part in that, in me making that decision and wanting to go into the Air Force to do, work on planes and to travel the country and be around people that I've never been around before and meet different people and see different ways of life and fall in love with North Carolina and fall in love with Idaho and have my first trip to Las Vegas and do all these things, go to concerts and NASCAR races and meet friends, lifelong friends. And I met my wife in North Carolina. So it was a huge, huge, big decision. And it was like that moment I was like, I knew I was at a fork in the road. It was like either I can go here or I can go here. And I've had forks in the road in the, beyond that point. But I know for a fact that that particular decision that I made was the most important decision I've ever made in my life. And I don't think I've ever made a more important decision than that right there.